Good morning, everyone out there in TV land. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach, International Keynote Speaker. Want to welcome you to our Friday session. As you see, again, I am alone on the stage. My counterpart, my partner in crime, Mr. John Wechter, had his foot surgery yesterday. It was very successful. He will be hobbling around for your viewing enjoyment relatively soon. He sends his thoughts and well wishes as well. We also like to start all of the sessions with kind of a thank you. And again, it's not lost on me the commitment to people that are making joys, even though we have a small studio guest and you are always welcome to come, of course. But historically, most people see us through the camera. So if you're joining us on Facebook Live, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. If you're joining us on YouTube Live, I thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. If you're joining us on Zoom, I also appreciate it. And if you're watching us on our Vimeo archive, again, I appreciate it as well. There's so much noise in the machine. The contributions you're making to your sales education will come back to you many, many times over. Starting on our sales current events. I don't even know where to start. We were actually talking prior to the session getting started. I remember opening the Wall Street Journal yesterday. There's the headline. Inflation, 9.1%. Now, understand what that means just if you take it in the simplest of simplest of simplest. So if you already know this, turn yourself off at this point. So everything that you buy has gone up 10%. Minimally. Some things, like in the case of gas, have gone up significantly more. We're talking 2 and 3 times the amount that it once was. Now, unfortunately, income hasn't held pace. So if things were going up crazy and you were making more money, well, then I guess that would be tolerable. The problem being is everything is going up like this, and income is only going like this, slightly above flat. So being in sales, we don't have the benefit of hiding behind the economy. We don't have the anonymity to be one face out of 1,000 people in your company. We eat what we kill. Now, I often say I like to eat a lot. So by de facto, that means you have to kill a lot. Not in the negative connotation, but the idea is that if you don't make sales, you don't make any money. If you can't have the income, everything else is going to struggle. Today's session is a wonderful, wonderful session, and we've got some handouts. So for those that are joining us electronically, you can certainly reach out to John or I. We'll make sure that we get you all the handouts and stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Today's session particularly is doing more with less. But it's almost, and by the way, this was actually the session that is scheduled for today. So all of our schedules, all of our sessions are built out a year in the future. And you'll see that they have this kind of commonality of curve. So they're all based on one of 4 things. They're based on the either attitude, behavior, or techniques. All learning falls into one of those things. And all implementation, by the way, follows that as well. So let me give you an example. Technique, the T right here. I can give you the words. I can tell you what to say. I can tell you how to say it. When they say this, you say this. When they say this, you say this. I can give you the words. I can even create the scenarios by which the words are appropriate. That's the behaviors. Unfortunately, I can't move your mouth. And that's the attitude. And today's session is an attitude session because it is very, very easy when you're facing what seems to be overwhelmingly negative news out in the world, and we've all faced it, right? You know, you filled up your car and it was $20 or $30 before. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I walk up to the pump now and I look, and you know how you can see on the pump and it shows you what the person that was before you got? And it was like $98, $97, $76. And I'm thinking to myself, they got to be looking for a drugstore that sells poison. They have to be. Because if you think about that, you know, that's like, you know, we all got a raise when gas was $2. They took the raise back now that gas is, you know, into the low 4 or to the high 4s, low 5s, and some places 6 or 7. So today's session is an attitude session. The goal for today is to change substantially how you think. Because I don't believe things are going to get better. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. But one of the things that I have been is very connected into the economics of the sales world since 2005. And there are certain patterns that we see starting to develop. Here's the things that I want you to look for. So when you're looking in the Wall Street Journal, you're going to see unemployment tick up, which it has. You're going to see people now communicating that they are stopping hiring, which they have. So if you watched recently, Twitter has unloaded about half of what they call their talent acquisition team. These are the people that were hiring the talent. Google has followed suit. Most major companies have a hiring freeze. They have a wage freeze. There's all of these little pieces of information that independently maybe don't create that pattern. But when you start putting them all together, it starts to create that pattern. And again, we are in sales. We don't have the benefit of saying, boss, I'm sorry, business is bad, nobody wants to buy. Again, we eat what we kill. So we have to be cogent that things are heading in that direction. And we, as salespeople, adapt and overcome, just like the military. Adapt and overcome. You may have to work twice as hard to get the same level of revenue that you have right now, but you can control that. That's why the behavior part of attitude, behavior, and technique is so critical. Because I'll give you an example. You don't control who buys. You've heard me say this. You cannot arm wrestle somebody to the ground and say, sign on the dotted line. So you can't control who buys, but you can control the behaviors that create a buying environment. So going to networking, going to training, prospecting, looking for opportunities, getting strong referrals, taking real advantage of the things that are already out there in the world that historically we don't take advantage of. And today's session is going to help you. And when I say doing more with less, it should actually be doing more with zero, because everything I'm going to give you has little or no cost involved with it. It requires time and discipline. And you'd think because it has no cost, everybody would be racing to do it, and yet we find that is not the case. And that's absolutely positively not the case. So let me put up on the board here, doing more with less. And let's get started. Doing more with less. First thing I want you to keep in mind is public relationships. I'm just going to write PR because it's easier to see on the camera. Public relations. Now, most people, when I say public relations, they think kind of their face forward to the world. And for our illustration, that's a pretty good indication. The problem being is most people have this wonderful body of knowledge. I often say my clients are brilliant at what they do. They need to be more brilliant at what I do, but they're brilliant at what they do, and yet they do everything in their power to let no one know about it. So if you were an academic, right, you were a professor, you were a researcher, you were a very, very smart person by whatever gauge smart is, what do smart people do? What do these smart people do? They write. They do papers. They get interviewed. People contact them and ask them because they are specialists. They are unique, right? They are subject matter experts. And if you haven't heard that word, you're going to start hearing it because you're going to start using it. A subject matter expert is just that. And yet, again, most people do everything they can, even though they're experts, to keep their business a secret, not let people know. So, for example, one of the things we do in public relationships is we write articles. Articles. How much does it cost to write an article? Nothing. It costs you nothing. And by the way, you don't have to be an amazing wordsmith to do it. Most people that write aren't amazing in any stretch of the way. They're able to communicate their thoughts on paper, which I think gives them a little bit of an edge. But it costs you nothing to write an article. And it's very interesting because when we put ads in papers, which my company does, our sales training company does, and we'll put in a quarter-page ad and it's $600. And then along with that quarter-page ad, we're going to get a half-page article that they're just going to give us, gratis. And it's interesting because I see this happen all the time. And I'll give you the best example. This was back at a company I owned in Michigan. We had put in a half-page ad on the bottom of the paper. On the top of the paper, we put an article. And we got a call. And this woman said, oh, I saw your stuff in the paper. And I said, oh, great, wonderful, thank you so much, blah, 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 blah. We had a wonderful conversation. She ultimately became a client of ours. But at the end of the conversation, I said, so what did you think of our ad? And here's what she says. Oh, you had an ad? Now keep in mind, the exact page where the article was, Directly beneath it was our ad. She totally blanked on the ad, but connected to the article, which shows you the strength. People who are experts in their business, they write. They do radio shows. They get interviewed on television. They have bylines in magazines. They do podcasts. They do conference calls. They do webinars because they are subject matter experts. Everything that I just told you has little or no cost involved with it. So say, for example, if there's a lot of upheaval out in the financial world and you're a financial planner, I would love to have that person pick up the phone, call a local radio station and said, hey, listen, the whole financial world is a raging dumpster fire. But we've got kind of an interesting thing on it. You guys don't happen to have a business show by any chance. Oh, you do? Do you ever bring in people to be interviewed? Really? That are experts in finance? Really? Well, I would love to talk to that person. Now, what does that cost you to do that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So PR isn't just when things go bad. Most people think of public relations is what you do when you have a terrible thing happen, and how do you control what your media face? No. Public relationships is an outbound. It's an offensive. It's if you think of it in terms of prospecting, it's a proactive prospecting. So articles, and just make a list. Radio, right? TV, newspapers, magazines. Make a list. Webinars. Conference calls, all right, events. Every single one of these things has little or no cost. It costs you nothing to do a conference call. But what most people do is they do a very poor job communicating themselves to the world, and as a result, nobody knows they exist. So here's what I say kiddingly. I am a shameless self-promoter. Shameless. Now, I know when I say that kiddingly, I hear people all the time, oh, I could never do that. Okay, then don't do that. Don't do that. But I will tell you, if you go to the animal kingdom, a lot of times you go to the animal kingdom and you're going to find very interesting parallels between the animal kingdom and the human kingdom. For example, the animals that are the most successful in propagating are what? Well, the animals that have the brightest plumage, if you're a bird, have the loudest song, the lion with the loudest roar, right? The brightest colored fish. Most of the most successful animals in the animal kingdom are the ones that are the most visible. They're the loudest. They're the easiest to see. They're the easiest to differentiate. And because of that, now we as human beings, if you look at all the people in the world and you look at personal branding, and you look at all the people, I love to use Lady Gaga as an example, especially in this session. Lady Gaga has a very good voice. She truly does. She's not Whitney Houston, right? But she has a very, very good voice. But what do people think of Lady Gaga as? When you think of her, what do you automatically connect with? Outlandish costumes and outlandish ass, even though she's a wonderful singer, right? The kind of the over-the-top persona. You look at everyone from Muhammad Ali to the rock stars of today. You almost can't get too over the top, right? Before, things that would destroy your career 50 years ago, now you can't get anywhere unless you have them, right? And people do questionable things, and who the hell knows where the world's going. Doing more with less. This is less. This is zero. But you know what it does require? Discipline. Is it easy? No. Getting rich is hard. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Now, most people won't do this, even though there's no cost involved. And that's why a little bit of effort on your behalf eclipses 99% of the other people, because they're just so lazy, they're not going to do any of it. Doing more with less. If I'm not wearing this is the armor of a sales trainer, I'm wearing a shirt that says Don Zavis Sales Training. Why is that? Because I have an entire closet of Ralph Lauren clothes. Mrs. Zavis is very concerned that I dress well. But when Ralph Lauren wears a Don Zavis Sales Training polo shirt, then I'll wear a Ralph Lauren polo shirt, right? I've never been out in the world and anybody's ever looked at my horse and said, oh, is that a Ralph Lauren? But I'll tell you what, almost without fail and question, when I'm wearing a Don Zavis Sales Training polo shirt, somebody will ask, oh, you do sales training. And then the conversation starts. I'm like NASCAR. I am my own self-promoter. What does it cost me to wear a polo shirt that says Don Zavis Sales Training after the purchase of the shirt? Nothing. Nothing. And all the people that work for me back in Michigan wear Don Zavis Sales Training polo shirts and khaki pants and the shoes of their choice, of which I pay every year for them to buy new pants. And we provide them with the shirts. Why? Because when they go out for lunch, they're wearing a Don Zavis Sales Training shirt. And when they go to the grocery store after work, they're wearing a Don Zavis Sales Training shirt. And when they go to Starbucks in the morning, before they come into my office, they're wearing a Don Zavis Sales Training shirt. What does it cost me other than the purchase of the shirt? And think of the hundreds of people you meet just in the course of the day. You know, putting magnets on the side of your car, because we're talking about that with one of my clients right now. Look at the hundreds of people that you drive by, thousands. How many parking lots do you park in on a daily basis? And no one knows you exist. Why do you think trucks, right? Companies that have trucks put their names on the trucks. It's not a stretch. Now, there may be a modest cost, less than $100 for those magnets. And yet, think of the return you get for the thousands of people who will know you exist that previously do not. All right, let's keep going. We've got a lot to cover. So PR, articles, radio, television, newspapers, magazines, conference calls, webinars, all of these kinds of things have little or no cost if you take advantage of them. Number 2, using your network. Using your network. Now, right now, I say, because statistically it's true, there are 200 people that are circling your universe. These are family, these are friends, these are neighbors, these are people that are on your Christmas card list. They're circling your universe. For some reason, they're in orbit around you. Keeping in mind that all of those 200 people, they also have 200 people that are circling their universe, and so on and so on and so on. You can engage your network by sending out a very simple letter. If you send out a letter to the very people that you have on your Christmas card list, and it sounds like this: I need your help. I'm starting a new business. I'm offering a new product. Who more so than those people really care about your interests? Your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your associates, these people are already predisposed to care about you. And yet I ask this in virtually every session. And I'll say, how many people have a brother or sister, sibling? And everybody will put up their hand. And I'll say, how many times has that brother or sister ever brought you a lead? All hands go down. Maybe one might stay up. And I'd say kiddingly, what, they don't love you? Well, of course they love you. Well, they don't know what you do? Well, of course they know what you do. Oh, but they don't know what a good prospect for you looks like. Absolutely they know what a good prospect for me looks like. Then why haven't they done anything? Because most people will if asked properly. I believe that most people are more than willing to give you leads and opportunities if asked properly, because most people don't see the relationship like that. I've never said, hey, don't bring me sales training leads. But because we've never had that conversation, they automatically default to not doing anything. But here's what I start with. I want to bear gifts. We call it priming the pump. Anybody who's ever worked with water or irrigation, priming the pump essentially says, right, you got to put a little water in the pump to be able to get the pump water flowing, right? Because if there's just air in the pump, the wheel just spins and it just moves in the air, right? We call it bearing gifts. So of all the people in your world, if you were to say this, hey, listen, Bob, you're talking to your neighbor. Hey, Bob, I know that you mentioned one time at the barbecue, at the block party, that you do something in computers. And I started to think that I got a lot of people in my world that are in technology. A lot of them probably could even benefit from an introduction to you. So can you share with me what you do and what a good prospect for you looks like? And then I'll share with you what a good prospect for me looks like. And now Bob will do what? Bob will tell you what a good prospect for him looks like. And I'm going to very strongly encourage you to find that prospect for Bob. Why? Because this network relationship is like a tennis game. Right? I give one to you first, right? I'm priming the pump. I'm bearing gifts. I do it first. I give it to you, and in a perfect world, what would you do back? Well, you would send one to me. And then I would send one to you. And you would send, and this would go on in perpetuity until somebody stops. Your network has little or no cost if you engage them properly. But most people really don't have a strong connection. You know, it's amazing how many people kind of go through the world without a lot of strong contacts. And this will give you the ability to do that because it's much easier for me to sell you than it is for you to sell you. Why? Because if I say I'm an amazing sales trainer, which is true, by the way, if I say I'm an amazing sales trainer, that's the ramblings of a salesperson. But if Cody says I'm an amazing sales trainer, it must be what? It must be true. So if I can engage people, right, get testimonials and do all those kinds of things that are going to gauge their interest, if I can bring my network to bear, if I can get these 200 people rallied around the idea of helping me, well, there's probably a pretty good chance that I might make a sale or two down the line. What's the cost? Nothing. Because they're helping you after you help them, right? You help them first. You prime the pump. You come bearing gifts. You bring them a lead. Doesn't have to turn into a sale, but you have to have them see your relationship different than you did before, all right? So PR is first, network is second. Let's keep going. We go for the no. Too many people waste time with people that are never, ever, ever, ever going to buy. They hear what they want to hear in the conversation. Somebody says might, possibly, could, right? Unsure. You hear all the language that's out there. But we as salespeople, being the ultimate optimists that we are, every time we talk to somebody, we automatically hear buying signs. They say, maybe, and we hear yes. They say possibly, and we're already cashing our commission check. Our natural optimism kind of blinds us from these things because we hear the things we want to hear. And it's interesting, a lot of times I'll go with my clients onto sales calls. Now, we have to clear that with the people that they're meeting with because when they see another person show up, I want them to understand why that I'm there. And I would often say, I'm just going to sit here in the back. I'm not involved. I'm strictly here to look, right? And I will hear so many times when they shoot themselves in the foot. They hear, we'll get out in the car and they're all excited, gotcha, got one. And I didn't hear that. In fact, I heard kind of the opposite. But the natural optimism of people historically goes towards the positive. We hear what we want to hear. That's why going for the no is a do more with less conversation. Because if I do everything in my power to get you to say no, and despite my best efforts, you still don't say no, I might have something. Say, for example, you have a product that has a very, very long lead time. And I'm going to say right up front, Bob, I got to tell you, if and when we ever get to the point where you're seriously interested, you're still looking at 12 weeks before you're going to get it. Best case scenario, 12 weeks. Even after we put the order in, no way it's going to go faster. So if that's a problem, that's a deal breaker, you might as well know right now. I have people all the time call me. We're really struggling. We can't make payroll, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm in the money business, right? I'm not a charity. Right? There's nothing I know that's going to help you solve your problems for free. Well, if you're already telling me that money's an issue and I'm in the money business, what am I probably going to want to connect and get some information about earliest? Money. So I'm going to say, Bob, look, I'd love to be able to help you. I think I probably can, but I got to tell you right up front, why in the world do you want to pay me a whole boatload of money? Right? Why don't you just go buy some pizzas, go get a Zig Ziglar tape and, put it on over lunch and do that. That's maybe $20. Here's what they say. Well, we did that. And here's what I say. And how'd that work out for you? And here's what they say. Not very well. And here's what I say. So how are you hoping that I can help you? Because I'm in the money business. If you don't have money, I can't help you, despite my desire to, because I'm in the money business. You go for the no. You tell them everything up front that you think will be deal killers. Up front, right in the beginning. Now, most salespeople will be like, oh, I could never do that. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to, intentionally? No, because you don't make sales by blowing smoke at people. If you know they need it in 2 weeks and you know the best you can do is 8 weeks, why would you want to go one step further than saying, listen, we can't do 2 weeks. That's it. 8 weeks is our best deal. I'm sorry. I'd love to have you as a client, but I certainly don't want to lie to you in the process of getting it. Go for the no. Do everything in your power to get them to say no. That doesn't mean be mean or confrontational or abusive, right? No, that's not the case, right? But if you have very specific policies, they got to know it right up front. If you have very specific procedures, they got to know it right up front. So, for example, if you have to conduct the work at your office, here's what you're going to say. Mrs. Jones, we're probably, I'm okay, we'll, meet over your kitchen table. But generally from that point on, pretty much most of the remaining businesses are going to be conducted in our office. I just want to make sure you're okay with that up front. Mr. Jones, we're not one of those, we're not like the bank on the corner where you can open up a $5 account and we're happy with this. If the client gets involved with me because we become absolutely immersive in your world, we expect them to bring all their resources, at least within 1 year to us. Maybe not immediately, but with an understanding that we're going to want these resources complete in 1 year. That's just the way I do business. That's just my policy. Let me tell you right up front. Because if we're going to fight in the beginning. If we're going to have a problem, have the problem in the beginning. Don't wait until you've got this thing moving. You go for the no. The idea of doing more with less essentially says we spend far too much time with people that are never, ever, ever, ever going to buy. And we call it work because they're willing to talk to us and meet with us and go to lunch with us and return our calls and email us. And we could do, and yet we're not going to make a dime out of the relationship. So I'm not saying don't be social. But what I am saying is if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? I believe right away. If I'm not going to make a sale, I want to find out right away. So I'm going to make sure that I shovel everything that could potentially kill my sale right up front. Because what that gives me is time. Time is true wealth. Time is wealth. Time is the currency of love. Time is what's important. And yet most people just throw it away like it's meaningless. Time is what's important. Time is the true wealth. It took me a long time to understand that. But time is the true wealth. I'll give you a great example before we move on. My grandmother, who's long since gone to heaven. And to keep in mind, in my world, because we're Sicilian, I saw my grandparents they didn't live with us. I saw them every single day. Every day. We would go over there. They would come over here. We would have dinner there. They would have dinner here. They'd go to our baseball things. We would do this every single day. And I would ask my grandmother, Christmas would be coming around, I'd be like, Grandma, what do you want for Christmas? Here's what she would say. Come visit me. And I would be like, Grandma, I see you every single day. You know what she says? It's not enough. It's not enough. Wasn't the money? She didn't want a gift. Time is the currency of love. And yet most people neglect it and they throw it away like it's nothing. Like it's nothing. Right? You could have, if my wife, Janet, right to this very day, I've turned down very lucrative speaking jobs because you know what she said? I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave. And I'd be like, well, I can make all this money. She goes, I don't care. I don't want you to leave. I want you home. I want you home that week. Period. That's it. I could care less about the money. I want you home. Now think about that. Think about the influence that has. Time is the currency of love. And yet most people, if you went to your significant other, and every day you said, hey, I can't see you today, but I love you. Hey, can't see you today either, but I love you, right? Boy, I think about you all the time. Can't see you today, but I love you. That would wear thin. Absence does not make the heart grow fonder. Absence makes you easier to forget. It's the same thing in sales. Go for the no. Do everything you can to have them say no. And if despite your best efforts, they still can't come up with a no, then you may truly, in fact, have something. Next thing is we are the architects of our own demise. Pay time? No pay time. Pay time, no pay time. So let's talk about the idea of pay time. Now, we live in kind of an interesting scenario because 300 years ago, when we were an agrarian society, we followed what we call the lunar calendar or the lunar day. And essentially, again, when you're in an agrarian society, you're farmers. You start the day when what happens? When the sun comes up, right? It's dangerous to be in the barn around the animals in the dark. It's dangerous to be in your fields and stuff. You don't want to be working around machinery when it's dark. So you started the day when the sun came up. And historically, you ended the day when the sun went down. That's where the lunar day came in. And some giant mind says, well, uniformly throughout the country, the sun's kind of up around 8 o'clock everywhere. And then depending on the time of the year, it's kind of stops at around 5 o'clock. Now, sometimes in the summer it's later, and sometimes in the winter it's earlier. But that 8 to 5 became the lunar day. And we started it in the morning, and we ended when the sun went down. That's where the adage comes, you make hay when the sun shines, right? You make hay when the sun shines. Now we're in a different situation because of electricity and lighting and everything. We've kind of moved away from the lunar aspects of it, and now we have what's called a linear week, which essentially starts at 12:01 Sunday morning, 12:01 a.m. Sunday morning, ends at 11:59 on Saturday night, the following Saturday. All right, that's the linear week, right? Because we don't have the same lunar characteristics. We have electric light, so starting when the sun came up or ending when the sun came down wasn't as important. But in a business world, it is important because you want to be available when your prospects are available. So historically, if your prospects are available generally 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, when do you want to be performing the greatest portion of your sales activities? It should be 8 to 5 Sunday through Friday. So what that means is that you'd be doing things that generate money. You're meeting with your clients. You're going to networking events. You're having breakfast or lunch or dinner with your prospects. You're making cold calls. You're doing everything that generates money because at that time, 8 to 5, these people, in fact, are available to you. There's an adage that we have that says during 8 to 5, which is pay time, 8 to 5, if you're sitting across the desk from someone who will not write you a check, don't be there. Now, if you unpack that, if you're in your office, nobody's going to write you a check in your office. Nobody. And if you go even one step further and say every dollar that you've ever gotten in your life, you got from somebody else. And the nice thing about that philosophy is that every day, the somebody else shows up outside your door. You don't have to invite them. They're just there. See the people. Be out in the world. Talk to people. Meet them in line at Starbucks. Talk to them at the bank. Meet them at the mall, whatever. But there are unlimited amounts of people that show up every single day. And you don't even have to invite them. They just show up for you. So you make hay when the sun shines. So during pay time activities, you're doing things that are directly contacting the people you're doing business with. So you're doing networking. You're doing meeting your clients. You're setting appointments. You're doing cold calls. You're meeting them for breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee. You're interacting directly. You're making hay when the sun shines. However, non-pay activities are the things that we can do outside of that 8 to 5. So let me give you some examples of the non-pay time activities. Working on a quote. Would that be a pay time activity or no pay time activity? That's a no pay time activity. Why? Well, because I can do that at 6 o'clock in the morning. I can do that at 9 o'clock at night. Reading industry periodicals, reading and research. Would that be pay time activity, no pay time activity? That's a no pay time activity. Meetings, like meetings with coworkers, things like that. That's a no pay time activity. You want a fast meeting? Have it start at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I guarantee that'll be the fastest meeting you ever had. Because that's time wasters. These are all things that don't make you any money. Responding to your emails. So many people get up in the morning and they look at their emails, and by what they see on their email dictates the day. No. If you have very specific activities that you're committing to do, you're going to make sure that you do them regardless of the emails. My emails say always the same thing. Anybody sends me an email, you're going to get an email back and it says, thank you for contacting Don Zavis. I'm unavailable at the moment. If it's an emergency, please call 248-497-5869. I'll be happy to respond immediately. However, I look at my emails at the start of the business day, at midday, and at the end of the business day, and you can expect to hear from me shortly thereafter. Thank you very much. Goodbye. So what I'm doing is I'm now training the people who are sending me emails. If you send me one in the morning, Don't expect you're going to get a response 5 minutes later. You'll get a response generally probably around lunch. If you send me one at 1 o'clock, it's generally going to be at the end of the, why? Because my business day doesn't end at 5 o'clock. My business day ends when it's done. When my email box is empty. When my phone log is done. When whatever I have committed to do this day is committed, I don't care if it's 11 o'clock at night. I start every day fresh. Now, is it hard? Of course it's hard. Again, most things that are worthwhile are hard. And yet, that's the reason most people won't do them, because most people are inherently lazy. So you look at all these things. So what really irks me is I'll call somebody, and it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. I'll say, what are you doing? He said, I'm working on some quotes. I'm like, get out. Get out. Put those down. Do them at 7 o'clock tonight. Pick up the phone. Call people you've never met before. Go places you've never been before. Have conversations with people that don't know that you exist. And that's why most people never go. They don't go to networking groups. They don't go to BNIs, LBNs. They go to nothing. And again, and they wonder why no one knows them and they don't exist. It's shameful because it is so unnecessary. And it's 100% within your what? Control. Your behaviors. You can control that 100% of the time. I want you to be doing pay-time activities between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock every single day. You make hay when the sun shines. That's it. Now, if you have an emergency or you find yourself in the office for some reason or you can respond to the emails, do it. It's okay. I'm not saying you can't. What I'm saying is I have people I hear all the time that don't go out and make sales calls because I'm just finishing my emails. Or I got all these phone calls that I have to return. No. You can do that all after hours. All your quotes and all of your reading and all of your preparation and all of your blah, 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 and all the stuff you need to do, unless it's directly interacting with a client or a prospect. It doesn't happen between 8 and 5. Now think about that. If you did nothing for between 8 and 5 every single day other than interact with people, you think you might pick up some additional sales? I think so. And most people don't ever have that chance because they never give themselves the opportunity. You know, they get up in the morning, they turn on their email, and whatever's on their email, right? And they'll go through their email, and they'll hover over it, waiting for a new email to come in to do something, because that sounds like work, right? You're clicking away feverishly, right? Sounds like work, sounds like things are happening. Not making any money, right? But it sounds like that. No, don't worry. 24 hours is a lot of time in the day. You know, nothing is worse when people say, oh my God, I'm so busy. Because there's a period of time where people have embraced that I'm so busy like a cloak of honor. I'm so busy, I'm so productive. I'm not making any money, but I'm so busy running around this big circle. And I love to tell people, like, when would you like to talk about that problem? Right? I'm busy, but if you knew me, it looked like I have all the time in the world. Right? And I get a lot accomplished. Why? Because when you start at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's easy. When you don't end until 10 o'clock at night, it's easy. You want to see how slow time goes? Light a candle and put your hand over it. Put your hand over the candle. Those seconds will tick by so slowly, you won't even believe it. But people are so used to wasting time that they don't know the value of it. Unfortunately, and some people unfortunately find out way too late in their life. So pay time, no pay time. Doing more with less. What does it cost us to be more conscientious with our time? Nothing. It costs us nothing. It's a matter of discipline, behavior, and focus. Again, doing more with less means doing more with less. There's no dollar value attached to any of these things. Next item. We call it the ABCs of priority. The ABCs of priority. What that basically says is that every person generally is usually great at only 2 or 3 things. Every person is generally great at 2 or 3 things. They might be mediocre at some other stuff, but they're great at 2 or 3 things. I'll use myself as an example. I am a great trainer, I am a great coach, and I am an amazing keynote speaker. You know what I'm not good at? Scheduling, right? Financial forms and putting in checks and crap. I hate that stuff, right? Now, I'm a smart guy. I can do it if you force me to do it. Yes, I could handle my own scheduling. And yes, I guess I could probably do my own books. but I'd hate it. The worst that I could be is, the best I could be is mediocre, right? But the woman who does my bookkeeping loves it. She loves it. She loves accounts, and she finds some like new little thing that QuickBooks could do, and then she calls me all giddy like, hey, Don, I found, and this woman's like 80, right? Oh my God, I found that we can do this, and when we push this button and this button, it's like she's all giddy. I'm like, I don't care. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah, we can, use it. But she loves it. And because she loves it, she's amazing at it. The ABCs of priority says that every person is generally only amazing at one or two things. The problem being is that they're forced to do all of the other things they're not amazing at. So I'm an amazing coach, an amazing trainer, an amazing keynote speaker. Again, all this other stuff I could probably be okay at. But the problem being is the most that I could ever be is mediocre. But most people fear bringing someone else in. They don't want to spend the money, right? They try to half-ass and cobble through something because they don't want to spend the money, not realizing that if their time was spent and freed up to do the things they are amazing at, they'd come back tenfold. It would come back tenfold. It would be more accurate, more consistent. You'd actually have it done when it's done. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, today you are a manager of a baseball team. You're a manager of a baseball team, right? And you get there and you're looking at all your players. And you have your star pitcher, $20 million a year. And you pull him over to the side and you say, listen, Bob, you're an amazing pitcher, but listen, you're a little weak out in center field. Why don't you go out there and I'm going to hit you some flies? What would Bob, the amazing pitcher, say? Are you out of your freaking mind? Every time I pick up the ball, I'm throwing it to a catcher. Every time. That's it. I don't want to be a center fielder. I'm never going to be an amazing center fielder. The most that I'm ever going to be is a mediocre center fielder. Why would you want me every time I have a ball in my hand not to practice pitching? Now that's kind of a strange scenario, but we all have gifts. We all are amazing. We all have special magic. But it's not in everything. And that's why we talk about companies. Amazing companies have amazing people in the right places. Mediocre companies have amazing people in the wrong places. You take the person who's a natural introvert and you put them in outside sales. You take the person that's a natural extrovert and you put them in some kind of inside thing in the basement of the company. They're going to hate it. They're not going to be good at it. They're not going to like it. So the ABCs of priority says everyone is amazing at a couple, 2, 3 things. Now, if you don't know what those things are, ask your family, your friends, your associates, your coworkers, people at church. Ask anybody. They will tell you. Your light shines through so brightly that they can see it even if you can't. That's why I'm saying find what your special magic is. Once you find it, you head in that direction only. Why? Because we're doing more with less. You don't have to fight the battle on 27 different fields. I'll give you another baseball analogy. The Cy Young Award is the award given to baseball pitchers. And essentially what they say is you can be a Cy Young Award-winning pitcher in the major leagues with one amazing pitch. One amazing, unhittable pitch. Because they look at your statistics. They look at how many errors, how many people you struck out, how many people foul balls. You can be a Cy Young Award winner with just one amazing pitch. So you don't have to fight the battle on 97 different fronts. If you're in an industry where you can sell 400 different products, you don't have to sell 1/400th to every product. You might pick the one that you love, that you're great at, you know all the inner workings, everything about it is right in your wheelhouse. Again, the ABCs of priority. Find what you're amazing at and focus in on just that. And if you can't find it, even after talking to your family, your friends, coworkers, neighbors, come to John and I. We'll help you find it. Again, everyone has special magic. They just don't know where it is sometimes, or they just don't let it out. You know, they're maybe for whatever reason, they're not comfortable communicating it. And the idea of doing more with less is that you already have this. You're not paying for it. It's nothing additional that you need. We just need to focus now what you do in order to be able to do that more effectively. ABC's a priority. So we went through PR, We went through networking, or maximizing your network. We talked about going for the no. We talked about pay time versus no pay time. We talked about the ABCs of priorities. So if you just do those, you'll get it 10 times more. And again, I'm going to come back to one thing I said earlier. It's all about this, time. Time is the currency of love. I'll give you a great example. So I'm doing a keynote. This is like 2 years ago. No, that's a year before COVID. So, Christ, that's 3 years ago now, isn't it? When did COVID start? 2020? Okay. Well, whenever COVID started, it was the year before that, right? So I'm down there. So I'm like up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like showered and ready for the world. I'm out the door by 5. So I'm down there in the breakfast area of the hotel and stuff, and it was like one of those courtyard inns where it's like all in the middle, right? It's like a big square with an open thing in a section. So I'm down there, and I'm having breakfast, and one of the guys who was in my class the day before comes up, and he sees me, and, normally they'll come up, and they'll, hi, we had a great class, really enjoy it, blah, blah. He goes, Don, you'd be so proud of me. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good opener. Yeah, tell me about it. He goes, I got up this morning at 4, and I sent out 50 emails before I came down here at 5 o'clock. And he was beaming with pride. And I said, really? So when do you want to talk about this problem? And the color just ran right down his face. And I said, you probably don't know why I said that, but I said, I want you to sit down with me right now. I said, I want you to look around this room, all these other people, because now it's like 6 o'clock, right? I want you to look at all these other people. Who are most of these people out here? Are these all people you could be doing business with? Are these all potential customers? He goes, well, yeah. I said, I would have rather you foregone 50 people on email and had breakfast with just one of them. Just one of them. Time is the currency of love. Face-to-face is the currency of love. My daughter, Cassandra, when she was young, and I've said this, and I think it's really, really, really poignant. I could put $10,000 worth of unwrapped toys in an empty room. I could be in the room next to it with an empty refrigerator box. Where do you think she'll want to be? With me in the room with the empty refrigerator box. They don't want the things. It isn't about the money, it's about the time. And yet we as salespeople try so hard to get clients, right? We take them out, we wine them and dine them, we visit them at their office, we kiss their butt 90 ways a Sunday. We sell them on the idea that we're going to be so hands-on, and then we bring them in, right? We make the sale and we neglect them. Right? Best example, car dealers are notorious for this, right? You go buy a new car from the car dealer, right? You work with a salesman. And the salesperson sells you the car. And if you have a problem with the car and you call the salesperson, what does he do? He throws you over his shoulder to the maintenance, to the warranty people. No, you sold them on the idea that you were going to be there with them side by side all the time. They miss that. They enjoy that camaraderie. They enjoy seeing you. They enjoy the lunches and the dinners and the time and the phone calls and the presents and email. And yet we get them on board and then we neglect them. And then we wonder why they leave us for the other person who does all the things that we did in the beginning. No. You can never shower enough love and affection and appreciation on the people you do business with. There is no endpoint to the love and appreciation that you can give to these people. And yet we do it all the time. We struggle to make the sale, we make the sale, and we neglect them. And I think one of the reasons that we neglect them is because we get sold on the idea of being busy. Right? I'm so busy. I'm running around in a circle, but I'm so busy doing it. I come home from work and I throw my feet up on the coffee table and I'm just exhausted. Didn't make any money. And I'm just exhausted. I have a standing rule. Right? If I'm doing a speaking engagement and I've been on, right, because it's not unusual when I get hired, I'll do 8 hours standing. I'll do 3 or 4 hour and a half breakout sessions. I'll do a 90-minute keynote. I'll be in a room just like this, filled up with people. And I'm talking constantly. Now imagine what that feels like at the end of a full day. And when I get back to my hotel room and I'm just beat, you know what I do? I take that big check and I just rub it on my tired back. Oh, yeah, I feel so much better. And I could go out dancing. If you're going to be tired and exhausted, at least have an end point, right? Have an end point that you're going to get something out of this. Work to that end. realize that, again, this is the money business. Doesn't mean we lie, cheat, and steal. But it does mean that we've got to be cogent of the steps we have to take to be successful. So time, right? Time is the currency of love. We've got to be aware of that. All too many times, we waste time with people that are never going to make a sale, and then we just waste time in general. You know, it's Tuesday afternoon, and I'm doing nothing. And it's worse when people, God forbid, make a sale. Most salespeople, if they make a sale in the morning, they turn off for the rest of the day, right? I made my sale in the morning, I'm done, right? I covered my quota, I'm good to go. No. D-Tech. You know what? No, let me do one thing before that. Everyone has to have, you've got to have a mechanism. See, I believe in a diagnostic. You know, that's why I think doctors love like MRIs and CAT scans and lab tests, because those things are definitive. They are diagnostics. They can tell you definitively when things go wrong. Yet, as salespeople, most of us don't have any kind of diagnostic. We don't have any goal for the day. And I always say your goals should be daily goals. My grandfather used to say, worry about today, tomorrow will take care of itself. And I can't tell you how many times people, you know, in November, they'll realize they're not going to make their quota, and now they've got 30 days left to try to change the world. No. You should have a goal for each and every day. And each and every individual person, the goal may not be money. For example, maybe I make a sales call today, which doesn't result in a sale today, but it starts the process that might result in a sale next week or next month. So you want to have a diagnostic, right, that you're going to be able to have, right? I'm just going to write D-I-A-G, diagnostic. You're going to want to have a diagnostic that you can look at every day to determine the success of the day. For example, Hilton Hotels, which is clients of ours. So Hilton Hotels, when Mr. Hilton originally started his first hotel, and he actually started with one, and the idea was he needed a way to figure out whether or not he was making money or losing money. Just a simple way, no financial statement, just a simple way. And he figured it like this. If I can rent over 50% of my rooms, I'm making money. And if I'm renting less than 50% of my rooms, I'm not making money. So if I build a hotel, I'm going to build a hotel, and I'm going to figure in such a way where over 50% occupancy, I'm making money. Less than 50%, I'm not making money. No financial statements, nothing. I don't need all that kind of stuff. No 300-page printouts. And all through the history, as he was developing the hotel chain, and when it went from one hotel to two hotels to three hotels to blah, 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 into the international conglomerate, that was what he would ask when he was in charge. Where do we stand today? And if his people said 63%, what did he know? He was making money, exactly. And if they said 46%, what did he know? They weren't making money, and then now he could do things to try to incentivize the people, right? Maybe offer room upgrades. So if your normal room is $100 and the deluxe room is $150, maybe they offer you the deluxe room for $125, right? There were things that they could do to incentivize an increase. But if he knew he was making money with 63% occupancy, what's he not going to do? He's not going to throw away a room unnecessarily. Now, this wasn't a 300-page. We're talking thousands of rooms, right, and hundreds of hotels. It was still the same language. Where do we stand today? Because he knew that each hotel, as it got built, when they figured out the pricing on the rooms, it was built on the idea that 50% occupancy is to break even. So if it was in Japan, it was built with that idea. If it was in Korea, if it was Austria, it didn't make a difference. They were all built on the same ideology. 50% make money, less than 50% lose money. Now, if you think about it, that was really simple, right? Here you are, the CEO of a company, tens of thousands of employees, and you can, just like that, determine the success and health of your company. We all need a version of that. Maybe somebody shut off my phone here because I noticed it just dinged. You know, some people might have a situation where they have. Sorry about that. Some people might have a situation where they do appointments. How many first appointments do I do? How many second appointments do I do? How many first meetings do I do? How many quotes do I do? Right? How many people do I talk to in a day? I have a great tool I love to use. I like to put 5 business cards in my wallet at the beginning of the day. And my goal at the end of the day is every business card is gone. Every business card is gone. I can't tell you how many people I meet. They get 500 business cards. 3 years later, there's 475 still in there. It's like that it was money. No. I'm going to give them out liberally. But I'm going to give them to people, and I'm going to do it consistently and in such a way where I give them to people that are going to see it as valuable. I don't want to give it to random people, but I also don't want to hold on to them like it's my last dollar. We're not going to do that, all right? Diagnostic. You figure out what works for you that can identify the health of whatever your business is. Again, so it could be, how many new people did I talk to today? How many business cards did I give out? How many quotes did I do? How many appointments first appointments did I have? How many second appointments did I have? How many events did I go to? All of these things are critical because you need a very quick diagnostic to determine if you're on the right track or if you're not on the right track. And most people stay on the wrong track, again, far too long. They're with people that were never, ever going to buy. That's why we say going for the no. They were never, ever going to buy. For whatever reason, they just, a lot of people have to hear the words no to know it's a no, right? There is a whole world of people out there. They have to hear the words no to know it's a no. I don't have to have that, right? In my world, I believe that your actions speak louder than your words, right? Your mom, when you were young, never listen to what people say, only listen to what they do. So if I'm working with somebody and they say, I'm interested, I'm interested, I'm interested, I'm interested, and then they don't return my emails, or they don't return my calls, or they don't return my texts, even though they said they were interested, well, your actions don't coincide with your words, right? I'm not going to call you 20 times because 5 weeks ago you said you were interested. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Never, again, your actions speak louder than words. Never listen to what they say, only listen to what they do. That's a diagnostic. And it becomes part of your policy of how you conduct your business. Next thing, DTEC. DTEC is a big one. We do an entire session on DTEC, right? What that means is most of the technology that we have, I really suggest that you only implement when you have no other choice. Like, for example, the best case scenario is a face-to-face. Why? Because you can see their body language, you can see what they say, you can, how they react when you say something. In a perfect world, face-to-face is by far the most idealistic. But if I can't have face-to-face, the next best is on the telephone. Now, it could be the telephone. It could be Zoom. It could be Skype, right? There's a lot of the technology-assisted face-to-face devices. Now, if I can't be on the face-to-face and I can't be on the phone, well, maybe I'll send a text, right? It goes right to their phone. Usually texts are identified quicker than emails are. So my third most desirable is text. Second desirable after that is an email. And then after the email is something you do on a platform, an in-message on LinkedIn or something like that. But again, the most desirable is the face-to-face. And yet most people avoid the face-to-face and the phone calls more than anything. They would much prefer to send an email than pick up the phone. They would much prefer to send a text, right? I can't tell you how many people and I've never gotten that. That never made any sense to me. Because if I can't be face-to-face, I want to be on the phone. Well, if it's 11 o'clock at night and I've got to communicate something to you, well, maybe text or a phone call is not going to be appropriate. Maybe an email. Or if I'm sending documentation, maybe an email would be okay. DTEC. Because the more commoditized you become, the more influence you're going to have on your pricing, negatively, by the way. You're offering all that other stuff, right? Most people get commoditized because they pull the human out of the equation. You just become that kind of talking head that's just out there rambling without the influence of the face-to-face. So what DTEC means is that in a perfect world, I want to have a face-to-face. If I can't have a face-to-face, I want it to be at least on a phone call or a Skype or a Zoom or some version of that. Text and emails are literally only when you have no other choice. Because we as human beings, we thrive on socialization. It's interesting because there's so many terrible things going on in the world. And you look at a lot of the people that have stringent psychological problems and harm themselves or take their own life. And when you kind of audit down to why a lot of that stuff was done, it was this feeling of ostracization from the world. Nobody likes me, nobody understands me, nobody wants me around, blah, 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 blah. So you would think that, it's interesting because if you ask people, what is the strongest of your emotion? If you had to pick that, what would be the strongest instinct that you have? And most people would say self-preservation. And yet, if you take the strongest instinct that nationally we believe, and you overlay that against people who harm themselves or suicide or things like that, clearly that doesn't coincide, because if your strongest instinct is self-preservation, then none of this stuff makes sense. So that ostracization, that not being a part of a group, that nobody's around me, no friends, nobody loves me, blah, 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 is an enormously strong characteristic. And that's why when we look at things like the deep tech, all of our technology is pushing that farther and farther away. It's moving us away, and yet I believe professional selling is still a face-to-face, eye-to-eye, belly-to-belly business. That I don't believe will ever change. I think you might start in the platform, so let me give you an illustration that we use in this, and we do an entire session on DTech. So if you see a lot of the dating sites that are out there, historically when you start on the dating site, and I'm a married guy for a long time, so I'm just taking this as hearsay. But essentially what the idea is that two people would have an interest of each other, and then one would check one of them, and if the other person checks that person, then it would give them the opportunity to talk within the platform. So within the Match.com platform. Now at that time, there's no names, no phone numbers, no email addresses, no texts, nothing like that. You're only talking first names within the platform. But if things go well inside the platform, the two parties might decide what? Well, here, let me give you my phone number, right? And text me. Okay. And then they start this text relationship back and forth, right? At this point in time, no emails, no face-to-face, no phone calls, nothing like that, right? Maybe they decide to email at the same time text. But if things go good on the text, one of them is going to say what? Well, maybe we should talk. Okay, and now we're moving to the left again. So we started on the platform, all right? And then we went from the platform, we went to some other secondary platform, right? So we got out of Match.com. Now we're doing a text, email, some version of that. If things go well there, we move to the left again, and now we're going to go to a phone call. If things head off well in the phone call, what's the next step? Meet face-to-face. So you can see the natural progression of contact ends at face-to-face. And that's why I tell people, well, if you start there, or at the very least you start at the phone to go to the face-to-face, you're so much further. Because there's a lot of people you'll talk to on Facebook, and I'll say, here's my phone number, call me. And then they'll send me another Facebook connection, right? Then they'll send me another, in link or something, or I'm talking to somebody on email, and I'll say, what's a good number to talk, what's a good number to talk physically at? And they're like, well, normally I, do most of my communication on LinkedIn. Or I do most of my communication by email. Well, not surprisingly, why you're struggling, because you're commoditized. You're taking the human out of this interaction. That's why DTech. I like handwritten thank you notes, right? If you send somebody a thank you email, I guess it's better than nothing, but only barely. Only barely. A handwritten, hand-stamped, handwritten note means something. Meeting somebody for coffee means something, right? You should be eating 3 times a day. Have somebody join you. You don't even have to pick up the tab if you don't feel like that's an issue for you. But the idea is that we try to deny ourselves all of these socializations, and yet we by ourselves are social creatures. We seek out our own kind naturally. So all the technology is actually, combative and abrasive against what we do naturally. All right, let's keep going. We got a couple more things I want to cover before we go. Create a machine. You want to create a machine. See, most people deal with everybody exactly the same. Everybody's different. One person we do this, 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 one person we do this. Now, if we did everything separately, so if there's no rules, then everybody's the exception, right? So imagine you owned a McDonald's and you didn't have a process, right? You have 2 ways you can order McDonald's. Drive-through and you can go to a kiosk. That's it. If you want any other way, if you want to send smoke signals, you want to send them an email, right? You want to slip a note underneath the front door, none of those things are going to get you a hamburger. They're giving you two ways. And by the way, here's what they're saying. On your Big Mac, you can have anything you want as long as it's these 5 things. You can have anything you want as long as it's these 5. So if you come in and you say, I'd like asparagus on my Big Mac, yep, that's not going to happen. You have to have a machine. You have to have a process. You have to be able to go step by step by step by step. Every company is different. A lot of people have a lot of different processes, but you need a process. You need a way to take just the nameless rabble in the world and put them through a process that determines the legitimacy of whether or not they're a prospect for you, right? We call it a sales funnel. Other people call it other different things. And yet most people do everything different for everybody. So how you deal with this person is different than this person, which is different than this person. That's too cumbersome. That's too hard. I suggest that you create a machine. If you don't have one now, we can help you create it. And maybe it might be a simple event, right? A simple event that you do, right? Maybe you do a conference call, right? Which is no cost. If you go to freeconferencecall.com, you'll get all your credentials for your free conference call. And you do a conference call, and part of your machine is that everybody new that you talk to, you invite to the conference call. And every person that comes to the conference call automatically gets a 1/2 hour complimentary consultation. So whether you have 300 people that come in or 200 or 1, it doesn't make any difference. Everybody comes in the top of the funnel, and as you work through the process, you're able to pull out the ones that are likely not going to be anything, right? Going for the no. But when you get to the bottom, despite your best effort of pulling everybody out, you might be able to have something. You need to create a machine. You need a process to go through of which everyone is treated the same. Because once you build it, it's kind of easy to do. We go back to McDonald's. They created their process. In fact, the value of a McDonald's franchise is just that. They have this amazing process. They say at 10:45, you need to have this many fries, this many this much Coke, these many hamburgers on the grill, this many buns. It's a very, very determined process. But you have to create your machine. If you look at most successful creatures in the world, they have a mechanism by which they create something that allows them to do something better. A spider is a great example. A spider will spend weeks developing a very, very unique, very, very ornate web. Specifically, in most cases, to trap and capture a very, very specific types of insects. It isn't everything for everybody. And you think, why don't they just kind of whip something up, half dash, and get a meal right off the bat? No. They realize that if they put together a very specific, very ornate web, not only is it strong, but it also works in perpetuity. They don't have to keep doing the web. They might have to repair it every so often, might be damaged by a captured insect. But once they invest the time to build the machine, then it works in perpetuity. So you look at most of the animals in the animal kingdom, they have a version of that, right? They create a process by which they hunt most effectively, by which they capture their food most effectively. And yet, we as salespeople, we're haphazard. We're all over the place at all times. You have to have a machine. You've got to have what we call a focusing elemental. So when you meet somebody new, you provide to them what the next step is. Oh, John, you know what? You know what? I'd love to invite you to my conference call. We do it every Tuesday. It's blah, blah, blah. Here's what we talk about. Here's the phone number. Here's the time. We'd love to have you join us. By the way, that's also a diagnostic. Because if John says, I'm interested, and you invite him to come to the conference call and he doesn't show up, what's he now telling you? He's not going to be as interested. But if he comes to the conference call, he's the first one there, what's that telling you? He is, exactly. Never listen to what they say, only listen to what they do. Their actions speak louder than words. But you have to give them the diagnostic. You have to give them the do. You have to give them the activity by which you can judge them against. And most people never do that. Most people spend too much time with kind of the wrong people or in the wrong circumstances. So give me an example, and this will be our close, right? Because we were talking about pay time and no pay time. So there's a concept called proximal relation to sale. Now, sales, by the way, professional selling is as much art as it is science, right? So what proximal relation to sale means is, this is me. Okay? This is my customer. You can see I'm a great artist, by the way. All right? This is me. This is my customer, right? He's got the money in his hand. And this is the person in the middle. That's a dress. It's a crappy dress, but that's a dress. All right? So the idea of proximal relation to sale is most people spend too much time with the person that knows the person that has the money. Right? They do nothing but go to networking groups. They do nothing but go to places where the people who know the people have the money. And we call that a second stage proximal relation to sale. This is a single stage. This is me. This is the person who knows the person. And this is the second stage, which is the person actually with the money. So generally when you go to a networking group, you go to a networking group with the idea that you're going to try to tap into the network that person has. You want to know the person who knows the person who actually has the money. Now, that's not a bad idea. The problem being is most people do that 100% of the time. They invest all their time knowing the person who knows the person who has the money. Which in reality, in your perfect world, you would want to be the person who knows the person directly. You're going to bypass that middleman. You're doing more with less. So what we say is you want to have a 25% proximal relation to sale and a 75% direct sale. So if all I did for 100% of my time was go to networking groups, well, yes, could you find a buyer in a networking group? Absolutely, sure. There could be somebody there that buys the products or services you sell. But all more times than not, you're actually talking to the person who knows the person that might ultimately be your sale. So if all you do, if all of your effort is talking to the person who knows the person who you want to make the sale to, now that person by de facto becomes your salesperson. They need to be able to communicate your value proposition to the other person. And that's very hard. A lot of times it's out of sight, out of mind. You leave the networking group, you're really geared up. 3 days later, you pretty much forgot everything about that. Probably forgot, you're twisted into your own world. So we say in the doing more or less philosophy, it's okay to invest 25% of your time with the person who knows the person with the money, but that leaves the remaining 75% of your time with that direct buyer. That means being out in the world, not into an environment where you're networking to try to find the person who knows the person. So what that means is being out in the world, right? Going into places where there's going to be other people, striking up a conversation. The art of conversation is so lost nowadays because I see people all the time. They're out amongst 100 people and they're like this, right? And they're trying to make sales like this, and I would literally take them by the chin and lift their chin up and go, right? Put your phone down. The person in front of you is your sale, not the person on the phone. The person in front of you is your sale. Why? Because the person on the phone, in the best case scenario, you hope that they become what? Your face-to-face, right? And you have one right in front of you. Why are you trying to make this person become your face-to-face when the person right in front of you is face-to-face? So the ideology of doing more with less talks about just really, really maximizing what you do. Let me give you some examples because we talked about handouts, right? This, and I'll give these to you. I think you already saw this. Kat, I don't think you saw this, right? One of the things that we do to create our machine is we do complimentary personality assessments. Cody, you already did one of these, right? The idea of a complimentary personality assessment is that people have a belief or a vision of themselves which may not necessarily be true. And it's interesting because this particular personality assessment, which by the way, that John Wechter is an absolute expert in understanding and interpreting, helps us as coaches and trainers to be able to determine exactly where your positives and negatives are, where your strengths and weaknesses are. We very much use this, for the ABCs of priority. We find the things that you're already amazing at, or at least this uncovers that. And by the way, Kata, you take that. Call John and take that assessment. I think it'd be beneficial for you. The idea is that this is part of our machine, not for you because we're not going to sell anything to you. But the idea is that this creates our machine. Because now when we sit down with the people, we interpret the things. We can point out where there might be some issues related to their sales ability. And then maybe there are some things that we can do as sales trainers and coaches to help them mitigate away from those, right? To help inoculate them from some of their weaknesses. Another thing is you should absolutely positively have an amazing single-page glossy flyer. There you go. I'm going to hold it up for the camera. This is your face to the world. Most people, now, is there a cost for the graphics? Absolutely. Is there a cost to print it on glossy paper? Absolutely. But your best face forward to these people wants to be the best face forward. Now, when I talk about doing more with less, and I talk about the idea that little or no money, this is just a little investment. Once this is done by a competent graphics person, I'll give you a great example. My graphics people, it's $50 an hour. This generally takes 2 hours. It'll take 1 hour to put the concept on, then we make whatever corrections we need, and then we'll look at it once the corrections are done, and pretty much that's it. So for $100, that should be your budget for a very good quality graphics person. Then you have to get it printed on good paper, and I encourage it to be glossy to have high impact. Now, you don't need 100,000 different variations. You just need one. Because you know how many most people have? 0. Most people have 0. Even the idea of spending $100 to have a graphics person do it is abhorrent to them. You should have a really cool postcard. A really cool postcard. Which, by the way, with a great message on the front of it. Now, this particular one happens to promote this session. So we will send these out, and we send these out a lot. And the idea ultimately is you would have a little bit of an information about you. You would have a simple postcard on the back. So now you have a very simple, very economical way to send a mail correspondence to anybody that you think of. So if you're looking in one of your local newspapers and somebody's opening a new business, right? You just put it, and on the bottom, put congrats on the new business and put a highlighter on it so they see that. A very simple, low tech, right? We're talking about D-Tech. Low tech. Can they avoid your phone calls? Absolutely. Sure, can they avoid your text? Absolutely. Can they avoid looking at this when they're holding the mail in their hand? No. They have to read your message to determine what? Whether to keep it or throw it away. They literally have to look at your message to decide. And when you look at emails, most people decide from the subject line. Or they'll decide from the name. If it's not a name that they know, they just delete it. If it's a subject line, they delete it. Your message that you took years and thousands of dollars to create never gets seen. This gets seen. Because the mere virtue of the fact they have to look at it, read it to determine what to do with it. And that might include throwing it out. But because there's a dollar value associated with this, most people will never do it. So here, this is quick examples. There you go. Take this one and this one. Last thing we're going to talk about before we get finalized on our hit list. You want to have a mechanism to get a referral. I'm going to give these to you. I want you to see these right now. And this is one of the few times I wish I had audio visual. We have a very simple postcard and a very simple referral program. If you give me a referral, regardless of whether or not that referral ultimately ends up in a sale, if it's just a legitimate potential sales training client, I will give you a $50 Visa gift card. Plain and simple. So if you send me an email and you say, Don, I think Joe Winger-Wanger would benefit from sales training. Joe, here's Don. Don, here's Joe. You get a $50 gift card. That's it. We don't have to make the sale. Nothing like that. They just have to be legitimate. So don't send me your mom. Don't send me your brother. Don't send me your neighbor. Right? We smoke out all that crap. The nice thing about this concept, see, most people when we were talking about ads in the paper, if you put a $600 ad into a paper and one person contacts you, what was the cost of that one person? $600, exactly. If you put a $1,000 ad in the paper and 2 people call you, now this is no guarantee you're going to make a sale. They called you. So you put a $1,000 ad in the paper, 2 people call you. How much was the cost of that person? $500 a piece. This is $50 always. And by the way, this is my favorite $50 to give away. Not that I'm stupid or not that I'm frivolous, but this only goes out when what happens? I get a personal introduction from somebody in my world that I likely hold in high value and trust, who's going to introduce me to someone else in their world that they likely hold in high value and trust about my sales training and sales coaching. Now, you have to have a referral program that is substantial enough to what we call move the meter. Most referral programs, again, doing more with less. See, I only give when I get in this situation, because if I don't get a referral or an introduction, what do I not have to give? Any whatsoever. And most people have a referral program that doesn't move the needle. So what they'll say is, well, yes, if you introduce me to somebody and they buy from me, you get $50. Well, there's a lot of moving parts there. There's the introduction, and then you hope that the person you're giving the introduction to is a good enough salesperson to actually make the close. And then if by God, some strange ability, they were able to make the close, then you make a buck in the deal. Not like this. You introduce me to somebody, and I don't care if you send me 4. You send me 4 people on a given day to introduce me to that are legitimate sales training prospects. I will give you 4 $50 Visa gift cards that you can use anywhere on the face of the earth that Visa uses. These are my favorite things to give out. Now, the reason I'm going a long way to make a point is because we only give these out when we get the referral. We're not putting an ad in the paper that no one may call, or we're putting an ad in the paper where one person might call, and that's $1,000 generated for that lead. No. This is $50, and it only goes out when it happens. So I'm going a long way to make a point, because in the doing more for less philosophy, I'm not saying don't advertise. I'm not even saying don't advertise more. What I am saying is the dollars that you have, be judicious with. Make sure that when you use them in such a way where it moves the needle. So when I get in front of a group, and I had one guy say, I know there's probably 10 people right now that would benefit from knowing you. You know what I said? That'll be the best $500 I give out. Because if you think about it, if any one of those people ultimately become a client of mine, which I hope that they would certainly do if they're legitimate, happened because this person introduced me to them. Had this person not introduced me to them, it would have never happened. Again, these are the best values. So I'm going a long way to make a point, but in your concept of doing more with less, it's just that. How do I do more with less? I can't afford $50,000 worth of advertising, but I can definitely pay you $25 if you introduce me to somebody worthwhile. The last and final thing, and I want to make sure we get on this, is our hit list. I'm a big proponent of this, and yet most people do a terrible job communicating who and what they are. I'm going to try to get close enough where you can kind of see this. And these are the handouts I talked about earlier if you want the handout. This hit list is nothing more than a list of the types of businesses that I generally do business with. And let me give you so this started from the concept of American Pickers, and I've told this story a dozen times. So if you ever watch the American Pickers, they're on, I think, like the Travel Channel or something like that. It's 2 guys that own an antique company. And they have this big truck, and they just drive around the country, and they look for barns overflowing with stuff and old cars rusting in the fields, and they knock on the door, and they say, hi, we're antiques dealers, and we noticed that you had this barn that had tons of stuff in there. I'd love the opportunity to take a look, and if you're interested, maybe we can offer to purchase some of the items. That sounds kind of cool, right? It's a cool show. Well, the first couple seasons when they had the show, they would go up and they would knock on the door, and they would say, hi, we're antiques dealers, and we notice you have a barn overflowing with stuff, and we buy old toys, and we buy old motorcycles and bicycles, and blah, blah, blah. And the problem being is that the person who's on the porch talking to them is now going through their mental Rolodex for toys, bicycles, and motorcycles. So if they don't have toys, bicycles, and motorcycles, what does the person on the porch generally say? Sorry, can't help you, don't have those. And they're off. About season 3, they came out with a list. And it's bigger than this, by the way. It's probably got 30 or 40 things on it. So when they knocked on the door, knock, 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 hi, we're antiques dealers. We saw your barn overflowing with stuff. This is the kind of stuff we look for. And now there's a list of 30 things that they would never remember when they were saying it themselves. And the guy in the porch, and you watch him do it, literally on camera, he goes, oh yeah, I have collectible dolls. And that's how the conversation starts. And now they invites them in and takes them to the room of creepy, scary dolls, and ultimately they can make a sale. So I'm going a long way to make a point, but most people, when they look for the people that they want to do business with, generally the first 2 or 3 are real easy because they're very obvious. If you're a real estate agent, it's going to be someone who wants to buy a house, someone who wants to sell a house. And yet there's probably lots of other introductions that you would benefit from that aren't buying a house or selling a house. So your hit list, give you an example. The ones on the bottom, inventors, startups, and those seeking funding. I do a lot of that. I met a guy seeking funding at a networking event on Wednesday who's ultimately going to become a client of mine. Why? Because he saw this and he says, yes, we're seeking funding for our new thing. And he told me about his gizmo, and it's kind of hip. Now, am I guaranteed to bring him money? No. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But had he not seen this, he would have never brought it up. Because at that point in time, a sales trainer and sales coach, you wouldn't be able to connect the dots, right? To connect the dots one to the other. Somebody seeking funding, and we should probably talk to a sales trainer, sales coach. You want to have a hit list. This is a way, and by the way, this isn't made in one day. This is a living document. It is added to. It is embellished. It is detailed. It is corrected. You take things away from it, you add things to it as your circumstances change. Your hit list is an incredibly important tool because now you can print up hundreds of these. And when you go to a networking group, you give 100 of them out. Here's what I'm looking for, right? Hopefully you have one. Hopefully the person you're talking to also has a hit list so you can help them as well. So when we talk about the idea as we wrap up today's session, doing more with less. The idea is you don't have to invest enormous amounts of money. Most of this stuff is little or no cost at all. By the way, the vast majority, no cost at all. Does it require discipline? Yes. Does it require effort? Yes, but getting rich is hard. And for all the people that are sitting on the sidelines lamenting the state of the world, don't. Right? There's going to be tons of people that are going to be making a crap load of money despite the challenges in the economy because they're going to maximize the opportunity that these challenges provide you with. So thank you so much. It's an absolute privilege to do this for you each and every week. I always say this. I know there's a lot of things, especially in the online world right now, that are taking your time, and there's a lot of noise in the machine, and the contribution you're making to your sales education will come back to you many times over. So on behalf of myself, Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach, and my not here partner in crime, John Wechter, we truly wish you good selling. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.